and that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. Why are these lines so iconic? Yeah, of course, the occasions that they are used in do make them iconic on its own, but they tend to use something in those speeches that a lot of times we forget to incorporate into our own talks that make them so memorable. And adding this one thing can take our talks to such a better level. And that is the power of rhetorical devices. And that's what we're going to talk about here today. How do we use the power of rhetoric into our own speeches to take them to the next level? We're going to go over 4 types of rhetorics, what they are, along with examples of them being used in great speeches, so that you can see for yourself what a difference they make when you sprinkle some of these rhetoric devices within a talk or a presentation. Hey, my name is Radeep and I'm the founder of Frantically Speaking, and I love learning about effective communications and sharing those learnings with you so that you can level up your communications game as well. Now, the reason rhetorical devices work is because they are so memorable and make our talks a lot more persuasive and powerful. The first one that we're going to discuss here is alliteration. It simply means repeating words with the same letter in one sentence. Here's an example by Obama using alliteration.
They have served tour after tour of duty in distant, different, and difficult places.
Now, he could have just said, they have served tour after tour of duty in far off, varied, and tough places. But it's when we throw an alliteration, distant, different, and difficult, is when it just sounds so much better. It's the same thing with a lot of different courses, books, or events that use alliteration to make them a lot more catchy and memorable to remember. Date with destiny, or communicate to captivate. Try to think of how you can take important sentences within your own speech and shift around some words to make it fit into alliteration. The next rhetorical device is anadiplosis, which simply means starting a sentence with the concluding word of your previous sentence. Here's an example by Yoda. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. He could have just said, fear leads to anger, which leads to hate, which leads to suffering, and it just falls apart. Now, we do need to pick our moments of when we want to use anadiplosis, because if we use it very often, it can become annoying for the listeners. So we should only use them when some sentences require a certain amount of emphasis. And if we are straying away a little from the rules, we don't always need to start it with the concluding sentence. We can also use it the way George Bush used it to start one of his most iconic speeches.
Tonight we are a country awakened to danger and called to defend freedom. Our grief has turned to anger, and anger to resolution.
The next rhetoric device is germinatio, or germination, or geminatio, however you pronounce it. It basically means repeating the same word in a sentence for emphasis. And Steve Jobs used this really well when he was giving his Apple presentations. That's 58 songs in every second of every minute of every hour of every day. He could have just said, that's 58 songs per second. And it's very evident to see that it does not have the same effect. He uses it another time. Here's a clip from that.
And so I've got voicemail, how I want to listen to it, when I want to listen to it, in any order I want to listen to it, with visual voicemail.
And it's the repetition of these words that makes the entire point so much more memorable. The next point is antithesis, which basically means to bring out the contrast in our ideas. Martin Luther King used this best in his I Have a Dream speech.
I have a dream. My poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
Without antithesis, the sentence would go somewhat like, I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will be raised in a nation where they're judged by the content of their character. It's only when we add that contrasting element that makes the main point so much more powerful. And this is also known as background contrast. If I were to show you this particular object and try to convince you that it's a very big object, it's a little hard for you to believe me. But when I show it in comparison to this, now it's a lot easier for me to convey my point. Try to use the theory of background contrast or adding antithesis within your speeches to make your arguments or points a lot more persuasive. And that's about it. 4 rhetorical devices along with some great examples to inspire you to use them to level up your own talks or presentations. If you have any more questions around things like public speaking or communications, we have an entire website with in-depth articles and resources dedicated just for that. So go check out franticallyspeaking.com. And we also created a great video which will help you practice public speaking in your everyday lives without the use or need of an audience. You can check that out right here.